Hello and welcome to the Play Creators Conference. Thank you for watching. I'm delighted to be joined by Elan Lee, CEO of Exploding Kittens. Elan, how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me. This is fun.
Good stuff. So if we start right back at the beginning in the life before Exploding Kittens, a long time ago now, you did have a career before that, a very good career, lots of really cool stuff. So what prompted the sort of seed of Exploding Kittens? Because you started off in video games, right? That was your...
Yeah. I'd spent most of my professional career doing things for digital, mostly working for Microsoft in the Xbox group, and spending all of my time putting screens in front of kids, and really getting to sit with that statement for a long time kind of started to weigh on me. And after a bunch of years, I finally decided it's time to try something new. I understand video games. I love video games. I still play video games every day. But what if we could make a shift? And I've played board games all my life. I'm the oldest of four kids, so a lot of me instigating games, tabletop games, run outside games. But what all those things have in common is that's me and my siblings, or me and my friends, sitting around a table, face to face, celebrating each other, having fun with each other. And I thought, if ever there was a point in my career where it's time to explore that, this is it. So I resigned from Microsoft, teamed up with some friends, and started a tabletop games company.
Amazing. So you did a full sort of Darth Vader reverse. You went from putting the screens in front of kids, and then the last minute you said, "No, this is it," and you turned.
That's it. That's what'll be engraved on my tombstone right there.
Amazing. And so I'm interested, that first, the Exploding Kittens, that was you and Matthew Inman from the Oatmeal.
Yeah.
Where did the first sort of look at that game? How did that Exploding Kittens game start?
Yeah. So there were three founding members of the company, me, Shane Small, and Matthew Inman. And Shane was the first one who came up with the idea. At the time, we didn't even know what to call it, but he had an idea for, hey, let's go back to the app. Let's build an app that's basically Russian roulette with cards. Like, what if the chamber of the gun, instead of one bullet and five blanks, or five empty slots, what if there were like 50 empty slots and one bullet? And is there a fun app in there? And we started talking about it, and we thought, hey, let's just go right to paper prototype. Forget the app, forget anything complicated. I will get some scraps of paper and a Sharpie, and let's just write this out and try playing. And so we did. And it was at first no fun at all. But it's no fault of our own. It was just a very early attempt, because that game that I just described was 100% luck, right? Are you going to draw the bullet in that deck or not? And so we started tinkering with it for just a few weeks and came up with a whole slew of cards that changed it from a luck-based game to a skill-based game. You could play cards that would affect your chances of drawing that bullet and dying, or forcing somebody else to draw it, or getting to a little glimpse into the future of what might be coming next, and then altering the game accordingly. And we played it with all our friends, and everyone really started to love it. And then we showed it to my friend Matthew Inman, who is the creator of the Oatmeal, and he also fell in love with it and said, how about this? Why don't you two let me join your team? I'll help you finish developing the game. I will draw all the art for all the cards for you, and we'll all publish this together. Because right now you're calling the game Bomb Squad, because the metaphor was defusing a bomb. And he said that really has no personality. There's no soul to that. And he said, instead of being scared of the bomb, the menacing, ticking, evil bomb that's just so on the nose, what if instead you were scared of an adorable, cute little furry kitten? And we call the game Exploding Kittens instead. And when Matthew Inman makes a suggestion about humor and audience appeal, the correct answer is yes, let's do that. Whatever you just said, let's do that. So we all teamed up, changed the name of the game, drew all the cards, put it up on Kickstarter, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, amazing. And was there ever any consideration in terms of pitching it to companies? Did you ever consider, rather than making a company, going to an existing company and pitching them the idea?
We thought about it for a minute, and really the ultimate decision was, we've got nothing to lose here. None of us are thinking about this as a full-time job. None of us are thinking about this as something that must succeed. So we thought, let's just put it up on Kickstarter. If it does well, great. If it doesn't do well, whatever. It was a fun weekend project, and we'll just all move on from there. So instead of approaching companies, we decided to kind of go it ourselves. And 7 minutes into launching the campaign, we met our campaign goal of raising $10,000 and thought, oh, well, it was probably a good choice not to go to other companies. And 24 hours later, we had our first $2 million. And 30 days later, when the campaign closed, we had almost 9 million. So yeah, I'm going to say that going to other companies, refusing to go, was a good choice.
Yes, yeah, it worked out. It worked out. And I'm really interested because we get a lot, and you must get this more than anyone. I think there's been a sort of knock-on effect for a lot of inventors or people that are new to the industry that on paper look at Exploding Kittens as the pinnacle. They go, just some guys went on Kickstarter, they made that much money. How much work can it be? Let's do that.
Right.
I'm interested in what was because obviously there are a few more things at play in terms of
Yeah.
there's the oatmeal appeal and there's a few other
Yeah.
things. So
Yeah, first and foremost, it's important to say running a crowdfunding campaign is so much work. I cannot possibly overstate that. For 30 days, you do not sleep, you do not see friends, you are stressed all the time. Everything is breaking constantly. Any moment you do not pay 100% of your attention to that campaign, the numbers start to dive. It is a 1-to-1 ratio, and it sucks. It is so much work. And if you do it right, you're also working that hard for the month leading up to the Kickstarter campaign, because on day one, you can't just say, well, we'll see what happens. You actually have to have a plan for every day of that thing. So for us, there were really two big elements. The easy one to point at, because it's so obvious, is the oatmeal. He posted it to his website, to his social following, and he brought millions of eyeballs to it. And the oatmeal is such a powerful force. He has worked so hard over the last decade to earn that audience and to get them to trust him, that when he posts something, they look, because there is that trust that's already been established. Cannot possibly underestimate that. Like, that is so, so, so huge. But a few days in, about a week in, after the oatmeal traffic had started to subside, we had to do something. We weren't prepared for that degree of traffic. We also weren't prepared for it to dump off so drastically. Like, we were going from literally millions and millions of views per day to suddenly thousands and then hundreds by the end of the first week. And it's because the entire oatmeal audience had come through, done their thing, made their decision, and gone on with their lives. And so what we decided to do at that point was something that I don't think anyone has ever done on Kickstarter before. We decided to gamify the experience. We said, look, we've already made millions of dollars. We're trying to raise 10,000. We've made millions. We are no longer interested in money. Instead, we're going to throw a really big party and you're all invited. So what that means for us is, instead of talking about, most campaigns do this thing called stretch goals, right? We're trying to raise $10,000, but if we get 20,000, we're going to upgrade everybody's game for free. You get 10 new cards. And if we get 50,000, then everybody gets a fancy carrying case, whatever the stretch goals are. We did those same things, stretch goals. We said, we're going to upgrade your game in these following ways, but nothing to do with money. Instead, let's all have fun together. We said, look, one of the characters in our game is called Taco Cat. And we think that guy's hilarious and adorable. And here's a picture of Taco Cat. And if you show us 25 pictures of real Taco Cats, however you define that, we will upgrade your game for free. If you take a picture of you and 100 friends wearing cat ears, we will upgrade everybody's game for free. We made a list of, 50 different hilarious, ridiculous, absurd challenges and said, this is it. We just want to play with you. We want to upgrade this game. We want you to have as much fun as we're having. So if you play with us, we will reward you. And we did that for the next 3 weeks of the campaign. And their numbers just started climbing. They went right back up to where they started, and then they grew from there. And it's really just the power of play, I think. We decided that we wanted to have a ton of fun, and we wanted our audience to have that much fun as well.
Absolutely, and it really grows and cements a community that I think have followed you, from that game through your
Yeah.
entire portfolio. And I'm interested, obviously, with that background at Microsoft, and going into the sort of game space, toys and games. What were some of the big differences? What were some of the things that you maybe weren't expecting or were expecting, going from that culture to the mass market board game world?
I think it's, well, okay, there's two kinds of interesting answers to that. One is on a production side of things. Physical games are smaller teams, but much more work. And it's because when you deliver a digital game, you need to get it right, but you don't need to get it perfect, because you can always patch a game and change it and update it and do all the things to accommodate for the fact that you didn't get it exactly right the first time. Physical games, no such luxury. You must nail it on your very first try. And if you screw up, you've just printed out 50,000 copies of that are going to stay that way forever. And often your game will not recover from a large enough mistake in that initial print run. So that was terrifying. Like I've never felt so much pressure on a delivery date, because we're literally stamping it like it's permanent and forever. So that was a thing to get used to, adjusted to. And then the other thing I found is audiences for video games, myself included. We talk about video games and the experiences we have, for the most part, in terms of personal experiences. Here's a thing I did. Here's how much fun I had. I want to share an experience I had with this community to talk about it. But there's a key word in there, an experience I had. Even if I'm playing a multiplayer game, it's still usually in terms of an experience that I had. The way that we talk about tabletop games is, I want to share an experience that we had. And it's a really key difference. It speaks to the kinds of games, the kinds of experiences that these games enable. You can't play these things single player. You can't play them alone. They're not personal experiences, they're community-based experiences. We like to say that we don't make games that are entertaining. We make games that make the people you're playing with entertaining. And that has been the core of all the games that the Exploding Kittens company has put out, because that's, for me, the difference, the most important difference between video games and physical games.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting. And I'm interested in terms of you guys as a company, the approach from the gameplay, the art style, the packaging of what you do, your presence at conventions, you sort of, for what is I know it's tabletop as well as mass market, but for that sort of company, you do a lot of things differently to what a lot of older organizations and bigger organizations are doing. So I'm interested in, have you seen, Exploding Kittens came along and a lot of mass market companies looked at it. It was one of those games that, from a small publisher, people who aren't into games know about that game, play that game, buy that game. It has this massive, massive appeal. Have you seen from the inside an effect in terms of how it has changed the mass market games company, or do you see the influence that it's had in every corner from tabletop to mass?
Yeah, I mean, well, the most obvious thing is just all the acquisition offers we get all the time, which is amazing and so flattering, but also not at all interesting. We see a lot of, on the bad end of things, we see a lot of copycats, right? We see a lot of, so to speak. We see people that copy our game mechanics, our design. We've seen people almost copy word for word our Kickstarter video. So there's a lot of that. That's easy to ignore. It's frustrating. I mean, they say it's flattery, but it's if we're going to call it flattery, it's still flattery that I'm going to ignore. On the more positive side of things, we have seen this beautiful tabletop renaissance. We've seen so many wonderful games come into the market that aren't published by Hasbro or Mattel or any of the other giants. They're independent people who have had great ideas, and they've teamed up with great artists, and they put it out on Kickstarter, and those games are doing really well. And I think if you were to walk through the toy section, the game section at Target 10 years ago, you'd basically see the same games that you would see on those shelves if Target existed 85 years ago, right? That was really the state of things a decade ago. Now you will see 3 games that your parents have played and the rest are all new. And they're exciting and they're interesting and some are great and some are horrible, but who cares? Because everybody's trying. And the way that we learn, the way that we grow this industry is by trying those new things. So I think we had a small part in that. I think we were in that we tried something new, had a massive success, and it showed others that, hey, just try, because who cares if you fail? It's a very small commitment, mostly in terms of time. Most of the commitment, rather, is time. And then you can try again. And there is an audience for it, and they are willing to pay for these beautiful experiences that allow them to celebrate the people they want to play with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm interested now, obviously the company is different. It's a full-on, full-on company rather than a one-man band, one game band. You've got a whole portfolio now. So what is your process nowadays? Obviously you've got poetry for Neanderthals, the new game out. How is your process different in terms of, right, this is our new game? How does the origins of your sort of ideation start now you're a company?
Yeah, we have changed quite a bit. We now have 40 people, 39 people working at Exploding Kittens. And they're really there's 2 very exciting things going on in the company. One is we now have enough resources, enough people, and enough expertise to do most of the production and distribution process ourselves. That's a huge statement for a small company. We're trying to remove all those external dependencies. One of the reasons that through COVID, that our game has been able to stay on the shelves and keep getting shipped is because we control that process, and we built it through so many hours of learning and rebuilding and tearing it apart and rebuilding, that we're so proud to say, like, we can get our game to any person in the world who wants it because we have all of the pieces to get it from point A to point B. So that's a very, very exciting change for me, is to remove all those external dependencies. Um, and the second big change is we started out with essentially me being the only internal game designer. In our first 3 games, well, that's not true. Our first 3 games were a mix of design of at first the 3 founders, and then later when we went down to only two of the founding members are still at the company, myself and Matt Inman. The 2 of us designed everything. And if you want to grow and you want to put out more games, more than 1 game every 18 months, you have to start seeking outside help. So we've started working with external designers. One of our top selling games ever is a game called Throw Burrito, which is a mix of a card game and dodgeball all in one box. And that was not designed internally. That was designed by our friend Brian Spence, who is an incredible game designer with an incredible track record. And he came to us and said, I've got this idea for a game. It's at the time, he's like, it's called Flaming Mangoes, and you throw these little squishy mangoes at each other as you play cards. And we completely fell in love with it and worked with him to take it from Flaming Mangoes to Throw Burrito, what it is today. And that was very eye-opening for us. That was the very first step in working with someone external. Now we look at about 100 external submissions a week. And it's so incredibly flattering that people want to share their ideas with us. And the ones that we fall in love with, we now work with external designers to turn into games. That's not to say I'm not still designing stuff myself, but I'll put out a game every year or 2 years, and we want to do 3 a year, which means our network has grown, and we're going to continue to make really good use of it.
Amazing. That's really exciting to hear. And I suppose for any inventors watching who find that prospect very exciting, what is that process like in terms of what should they know? What makes for a great Exploding Kittens concept? What sort of things are you looking for?
A huge emphasis for us is interactivity. So many games that we see are essentially multiplayer solitaire. The game really, I keep pointing at Exploding Kittens as, for me, what we're looking for in each game. If you look at all the cards of Exploding Kittens, every single card performs an action. And every one of those actions, if you actually carefully analyze them, creates an interaction between you and another person at the table. Every one of them, very specifically designed to do so. Some very obvious, some very subtle, some will only take effect in a few, not immediately, but in a few minutes. That to me is really the key for all the games that we look for. How do you make sure that everybody else is converting into entertainment for others at the table? Take an action, yeah, okay, it helped or hurt you, but it involved somebody else. That to me is the secret to a good game.
Yeah, amazing. And in terms of where you find, because I know there was is it the Burning Cat show that you were doing that was
Yeah,
that?
yeah, Burning Cat. We were we kept getting kicked out of conventions that we went to just over and over again because we built a booth, a very long story, but we built a booth that got so popular that the lines created a fire hazard. So we kept getting kicked out everywhere we went. So finally we decided, let's rent out the Portland Convention Center and just throw our own convention. We called it Burning Cat. And the tragic part is it was scheduled to debut April 2020. So of course it had to get postponed indefinitely. We are still waiting for convention centers to even sell future dates because the future right now is so uncertain. So Burning Cat, I'm really hoping someday will still exist. We have so much cool stuff planned, a warehouse full of props that we built, and it's all just sitting there waiting.
But the plan around that for whenever, hopefully it does happen, there was going to be an emphasis on inventors. There was a place for inventors to go to for that, right?
Yeah, we actually designed what I liked was a very clever badge system. You go to a convention, you wear a badge just saying your name and what company you're with. Our badge system actually doubled as a matchmaking service. So you could use it, you could fill out some information, and we would print the badge in such a way saying, I'm a game inventor, I'm looking for an artist. I'm an artist, I'm looking for a publisher. So you could actually look around and talk to people. We had a really nice reception area where people could hang out and mingle. And we really wanted to think of part of the conference as a matchmaking system because we want more great games out there. We know people can't do it themselves. They need to find others who share their vision and their enthusiasm. And we thought, if we get them all in the same room, all we got to do is like get that last connectivity piece in place, which is introduce them to each other.
Yeah, cool. Well, fingers crossed. Fingers crossed things work out and we can enjoy that soon.
Yes.
And in terms of your creative process, obviously working with the oatmeal, all your games look incredible and they've got great artwork and novel themes a lot of the time. In terms of when you're having ideas, how does that process work? Is it that you'll have the nuts and bolts of an idea and then you'll talk to Matt and say, what sort of fun look can we give this? Or do you sometimes start with, right, we want to do a game set in the world of Neanderthals, let's see what happens. What comes first?
It's we've gone both ways. Sometimes I'll have a game idea and I'll go to Matt and say, please, please, please bring this to life or add soul to it. Sometimes Matt will come to me. In the case of Bears versus Babies, Matt had this great idea for he's like, I can write all these hilarious body parts. This is the funniest head, and look at this incredible torso, and here's these legs and these arms. And what if I did 50 of each of those and you could mix and match and create your own monsters? I really want a game out of that. And so I took that and wrote Bears versus Babies out of that. So it really does go either way. But both of those elements are vital, right? You must have a really compelling core gameplay mechanic, and you must have really compelling art and a theme. And I tend to be really good at one, and Matt tends to be really good at the other. And so it's a really nice partnership that we've created.
Yeah, nice. And I suppose speaking of your latest game, Poetry for Neanderthals, where did the idea for that come from? And for anyone who hasn't had the pleasure of seeing it yet, how did it come that game?
This is one of the best things I think we've ever made. So Poetry for Neanderthals, the overview is so simple. It's two teams. If it's your turn as the poet, your goal is you've got a card in front of you. It has a word on it. You have to get your teammates to say the word on the card. The trick is you can only speak using words with one syllable. So very quickly, you devolve into sounding like a caveman or a Neanderthal. And it's hilarious. And this is when we sent this one out for play testing to all of our families that test games for us. And normally our deal is, videotape yourself playing and then send us the game back, send us the videos back, and we'll figure out what changes we have to make. This was the only game we've ever sent out where the family simply refused to send the game back. just 0% came back to us. And you look at something like that and it's like, oh, wait a sec. We were going to go slow on this. We were going to wait till COVID calmed down a little, but actually maybe it's the opposite. Maybe this is exactly what the world needs right now. All of these families are quarantined at home together. This is bringing them tremendous joy, even the crappy prototype version we sent out. So maybe we ought to hit the gas on this thing, which we did. The game originally came from two friends of mine, Jacob and Francesca. They're actually two Google employees who never had any game design experience at all. But I met them at a conference in Chicago, and they said, we have this idea for a game where we're going to turn English into your second language. And what that means is you have to say these crazy long sentences. I went to the market and met a dragon who bought me an eggplant, and then we had a picnic together, right? And if try to say that sentence using only single syllable words, and I would try, and I sounded like an idiot, and they would all laugh, and it was great. And I said, look, I don't think this is refined enough yet, but this is so fun. You've come across, it's like Taboo, right? Like, was it 30, 40 years ago when Taboo was created, they came across the simplest mechanic. Get your teammates to say this word. Here are the words you can't say. Brilliant. So easy. I played Taboo a ton. And I think everybody was always searching for what is a concept as simple as Taboo that rewards that kind of team-based word play. This is the first one I've seen. And I said, look, I want to simplify this all the way down to, let's take huge sentences, simplify it all the way down to just one word on a card. And we're going to put a funny theme on it. And the game actually comes with an inflatable caveman club. So when anybody says a multi-syllable word, you get to bonk them on the head. And it worked. It worked really well. We launched the game just a few weeks ago. It's doing incredibly well. I'm so proud of it. And it is, I think, just the perfect game for quarantine.
Yeah, it's great. It's very good. And I'm interested in how do you go about sort of fueling your creativity? What do you do to keep those ideas coming? And has that evolved much over the years?
It's evolved a lot since I had a kid, because now I'm so massively sleep deprived. It's much harder. But I think creativity has three essential steps. I find myself thinking about this a lot. So bear with me. I'm kind of working through an idea here. The three steps I think are, one is define the problem, because I don't think blue sky creativity ever works, or rarely works, right? You need to understand very specifically what problem you're trying to solve. And you want to build as tight a box around that problem as you can, because the more you can say, I have to do exactly this and I don't need to worry about this other stuff, the easier it is to filter out bad ideas. So that's step one, really clearly defined constraints. Two is raw material. And I mean, like, you don't know where inspiration is coming from, so don't eliminate anything. Don't read books. Read all the books. Don't watch TV. Watch all the TV. Like, just get as much stuff into your head as you can. Play all the games. Watch all the movies. Like, get all of that raw material into your head, and don't think about it. Don't try to categorize it or classify it. Just get it in there. Now that you've got these two things, a very well-constrained problem and all this brain full of raw materials, now you get to do this thing that is just mixing and matching. Okay, what if it was cards plus dodgeball? What if it was parachuting plus that weird TV talk show thing I saw on Netflix last week? Like, most of the time, what you're going to say is, nope, next, nope, next, nope, next. And you'll do that hundreds or thousands or millions of times. And that's fine, because you've got so much raw material in there that you can keep mixing and matching. And finally, you'll hit one that's interesting, and you'll try it and it'll probably fail. So you'll play mix and match some more. But as you do this, that mixing is going to get more refined, and it's going to get more successful, and it's going to get way more productive. And I can't say, like, this is exactly how you brainstorm, this is exactly where ideas come from, but I have found that process, that loop, is what goes on in my head constantly when I'm trying to solve a problem or come up with a new concept.
Amazing. And one thing I'm interested in, looping sort of back to one of the first things you said about the screens and things. I mean, do you think, as the video game space has changed, obviously since when you were in it, and that's changing and evolving all the time as well, Do you think there's ever going to be a way of sort of properly cracking that mix? And you see it, you see it often every year. There's always a different take on it, where it's, here's a card game that utilizes Alexa, or here's a card game that you can mix with this app and stuff like that. Do you think there is a way for these things to cohabit eventually? Will there ever be an Exploding Kittens game that you have to play with an iPad and some cards? Or
Yeah, I really hope so. I mean, we're certainly exploring a lot of ideas there. We haven't found anything that we've fallen in love with yet, but it does seem like I can I can change play patterns a little bit. I can get families to put down their phones for an hour a week. And that's great. I celebrate that. That's amazing. Game night, an hour a week, no phones, play a game, enjoy each other. That's phenomenal. And I don't ever want to do anything to sacrifice that, because I think that's so important for families and friends. But I do think there is also an opportunity to creep into all of those other hours in the week, just a little bit. So maybe you can play a game with a digital device. One of the ones we're actually tinkering with right now is a game that is a deck of cards, but a phone is required. There's a shared element on the phone that enables the cards to do certain interesting things. And I don't know if that'll ever see the light of day. It's so much fun to test, and everyone who plays it loves it. But is there an audience for that? Are people willing to say, I'm going to buy this box and it doesn't have everything in it I need to play? I still need to download a free app, but I still need to download an app, and we have to put it in the middle of the table. That might be too big a barrier. I think someday we'll be there. I hope it's today. And those who experiment in that space, again, very little to lose. So play around, because the only way you're going to know if you're right is to try everything.
Yeah, amazing. And finally, obviously, the reason we're chatting via screens rather than face to face is lockdown and coronavirus and all that stuff. So I'm interested in how has lockdown sort of changed how you guys work, how you guys create games, and do you think there's anything that that will come out of lockdown that will actually change the sort of games you look for? Because we hear from some companies about people are playing games over Zoom, and is that something we look at now? Has it changed in terms of what you're looking at?
Yeah. Poetry for Neanderthals is the easiest example to point at. We knew that was a game we would have gone much slower on. We pushed it out the door as quickly as we possibly could, because we knew people were stuck at home and needed something like that. We've also released, because of COVID, we released a completely Zoom-based version of Poetry for Neanderthals, and another one for Exploding Kittens. And so what this requires is someone has to own the game. Like, you need the actual physical cards, because we don't want to build a video game. But everything else is Zoom-based, or whatever, pick your video chat of choice. Put as many people on the screen as you would like to connect with, and here's a rule set that will allow you to play the game with all of those people, regardless of where they are in the world. And we deliver all that stuff for free, because we really, really want people to get through this. And we think we have the tools to make it a little bit more bearable. So we will continue to do that. We'll continue to find video chat based versions of our games and put them out there as often as we can. The other thing, though, from a production standpoint, testing games has become so challenging. We're not, our testing teams are not in the same rooms anymore. We've been forced to go virtual. We use Tabletop Simulator a lot to test out games. It's not a good experience right now. It adds so many barriers to the gameplay experience. You pick up a card and it falls out of your hand. Things flip over inadvertently. Like, it's really frustrating. And unfortunately, this caught us all off guard. And so there aren't better tools out there yet. I hope, if anybody knows better tools than Tabletop Simulator, please let me know, because we are in desperate need of a better testing situation. But it's really tricky. We are about to launch a game called, the name is actually a very secret. So
almost. We almost got it.
Almost got it. It was so close, and then I remembered, I'm not allowed to talk about this. But the game itself is a very, very physical game. It's kind of a mix of pinball with slingshots. Very physical. You're flying little balls back and forth towards your opponent, trying to score points. Impossible to test virtually. Impossible, right? Like the physics of this game are so vital to the gameplay. So what we've done is we built 2 prototypes and we just mail them back and forth to each other. One of the games I think we calculated has been across the country 14 times, back and forth 14 times. It's probably got more air miles than most human beings. And it's fine. We're working through it. But man, it sucks. I really wish we were all in the same room. This stuff would be so much faster and so much better.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's fascinating. So no, amazing. Thank you so much for taking time out to do this. Congrats again on Poetry for Neanderthals. It's great.
Thank you.
Good luck with the top secret pinball game that we didn't quite catch the name of, but we'll know about that soon.
Yeah, look at explodingkittens.com or sign up for the mailing list. I promise we will tell everybody about it. It's going to be a big deal. We're really excited. So
amazing.
There will be an announcement.
And the last thing is, if any inventors have ideas and they think, oh, we'd love to get it in front of you guys, do you have an online thing, or is it more just trying to capture shows?
No. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. If you go to explodingkittens.com, there is a button right there on the page saying, "Got an idea? Click here and let's chat."
Amazing. Let the floodgates be open. So amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much, Elan, for that. We really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed watching, and we'll hopefully catch up soon.
Thank you so much.